My dear 11th class economic students, Assalamu alaikum. In this lecture, we will discuss the strategy and policies adopted by Indian government to promote the growth and development of industrial sector during the pre-reform period. That is the period between 1950 to 1990. Before proceeding to the main topic, let us first study the importance of industrialization. Students, industrial development is a very important aspect of any economy. It plays a crucial role in the context of economic growth and development of any country. It creates employment opportunities to a large section of population. With the increase in population, agricultural sector is unable to absorb the surplus labor. So the surplus labor resulted from increasing population can be gainfully employed only in occupations outside the agriculture. And in this context, industry plays an important role, thus reduces the problem of unemployment. The growth of industries can provide a base for rapid growth of income and savings because the productivity rates are higher in industry than in agriculture. Thus, we can say that growth of industries can contribute to the growth of national income and per capita income in a country. There is a general consensus that industrial development has a trickle-down effect, which means that its impacts or benefits are spread across different individuals, groups, sectors, and countries. Or in other words, we can say that the benefits of industrial development are shared by all the participants from top down. Moreover, it is with the spread of industrialization that social overheads, or we can say the infrastructure, has acquired a global significance. Industrialization led to the development of economic infrastructure like roads, dams, bridges, banks, insurance companies, transport and communication facilities, power facilities, etc. Industries also play a very important role in modernizing the agricultural sector. Agriculture requires improved farm machinery like tractors, threshers, etc., and other inputs like chemical fertilizers and pesticides, which are sufficiently provided by the industries and thereby leads to the rise in farm productivity. Industries are also capable of utilizing all the resources in a more or much better way. The industries can even make use of scraps and waste materials. Now coming to the strategies of industrialization, students, as we already studied in our previous lectures, that on the eve of independence, India's industrial sector was in a very bad, or we can say poor condition. Its contribution to gross domestic product of India was only 11.8% at that very time. The technology was backward, and as a result, the output and productivity were very low. So it became clear that there needed to be an emphasis on industrial development. And in this context, direct intervention of state was considered essential due to lack of capital with private entrepreneurs and lack of incentive among the private enterprises. So the strategy adopted by Indian government immediately after independence was to accelerate industrial growth and development with direct intervention and participation of state, or we can say the public sector had been given a major role in order to give a big boost to industrial development in our country. It was also decided that state would have absolute and complete control over all industries that were vital to the economy via licenses and permits. And in this context, the Industrial Development and Resolution Act was enacted in 1951, and the main objective of the act was the regulation of industrial development in accordance with planned authorities. So, the Industrial Development and Resolution Act empowered the central government to regulate the industrial development through licensing and permits. Furthermore, to develop the industrial sector, the government formed appropriate industrial policies in the pre-reform era like Industrial Policy Resolution 1948, Industrial Policy Resolution of 1956, Industrial Policy of 1977, and Industrial Policy of 1980. The main objective of all those industrial policies was to accelerate the growth of industrial sector with maximum intervention of state. Since the Industrial Policy Resolution of 1956 is in your syllabus, so let us discuss it in detail. First, what is industrial policy? Students, industrial policy is the instrument through which the government can regulate the industrial activity in an economy. During the second five-year plan, the Industrial Policy Resolution 1956 came into action. This policy was based on the Mahalanobis model of economic growth, which put emphasis on the development of heavy and capital goods industries. This Industrial Policy Resolution 1956 was a clear and loud declaration of the government on the leading role of the government in the process of industrialization. This resolution laid a roadmap of the second five-year plan in India, and it was the foundation stone of the socialistic pattern of society. That is, it is with this policy resolution that India adopted a socialistic outlook with strong public sector participation in the industrial development. The main objectives of industrial policy resolution were to accelerate the rate of growth and speed up the process of industrialization, to develop heavy industries, especially those that produce capital goods, in order to create a robust capital base for the economy, to expand the participation of public sector in industrial development, to reduce disparities of income and wealth, to build up large cooperative sector, and lastly to prevent monopolies and concentration of income and wealth in the hands of a few. Or generally, we can say that this policy aimed at achieving the principle of growth with social justice. Now, coming to the features of Industrial Policy Resolution 1956, the first feature of Industrial Policy Resolution 1956 was the threefold classification of industries. Under this policy, industries were classified into three schedules depending upon the role of state, that is, depending upon the role of public sector. First schedule is Schedule A. 17 important industries were listed in Schedule A, whose future development would be the responsibility of the state. Or we can say this category of industries were exclusively owned only by the state, and this schedule included some important and strategic industries such as defense industry, atomic industry, iron and steel industry, heavy machineries industry, and etc. Second is Schedule B industries. Schedule B included 12 industries which could be established both as the private and public sector enterprises. However, the private sector was to play only a secondary role, that is, it was only to supplement the efforts of the public sector, with state or public sector taking sole responsibility for starting new industrial units. And the third schedule is Schedule C. All other industries which were not included in Schedule A and Schedule B were under the Schedule C. The industries included in the Schedule C were left open for the private sector participation. However, the state had the right to undertake any type of industrial activity. Thus, Industrial Policy Resolution 1956 clearly implied that the state was to play an important role in the process of industrialization. Second feature of the Industrial Policy Resolution 1956 was the introduction of industrial licensing, which implied that the industries in private sector could be established only through a license from the government in order to check on indiscriminate growth of the private industries. Every new industry needed a license and many permits from the appropriate ministry. They even needed permissions and permits to expand their existing industries. License was given by the government after proper scrutiny. The Industrial Policy Resolution 1956 also gave stress on the role of cottage and small-scale industries in India. In 1955, a special committee known as the Carre Committee advised the promotion of small-scale industries for the purpose of rural development, employment generation, and balanced regional growth. In this connection, a number of products were reserved for the small-scale industries, and they were given concessions in excise duty, along with providing bank credit at lower interest rates. Industrial Policy Resolution 1956 also stressed on the reduction of regional disparities by establishing industries in rural and backward areas through tax concessions and subsidies. Also, The licensing policy of the government was to promote regional equality as licenses were liberally issued for the backward regions compared to the relatively developed regions of the country. Moreover, the private entrepreneurs were offered many types of industrial soaps, that is, the industrial concessions like tax holidays, subsidies, power supply at concession rates, bank credit at concession rates for establishing industries in the backward regions of the country. Other features of the policy 1956 were to promote industrial peace by offering share to workers in the profit and management, better working environment, and participation in the management. This Industrial Policy Resolution 1956 also stressed the need to promote technical and managerial skills for industrial growth, thereby proposing the establishment of ITIs, that is Industrial Training Institutions, and introducing business management courses in universities. So now let us discuss in general the main features of the strategy of industrial growth adopted by Indian government during the period of 1950 to 1990. Firstly, the strategy stressed on the role of public sector in the industrial development, or we can say the public enterprises were to play a central, or we can say a major role in the process of industrialization. Private enterprises were to play only a secondary role, that is, they had to supplement the efforts of the public sector only. Private enterprises were to obtain a license for their industrial establishments. They even need license to expand the existing enterprises. Process of industrialization was to proceed in line with import substitution as a key policy instrument. Dear students, import substitution aimed at replacing the imports with domestic production. This means that domestic production of such goods was to be accorded high priority which were imported from abroad. The government also protected the domestic industries from foreign competition through tariffs and quotas. Besides small scale industries, main thrust was given to the development of large scale industries, especially the capital goods industries, with a view to build an infrastructural base in the country. Now, coming to the good and bad effects of the strategy of industrialization adopted during the period 1950 to 1990. Firstly, let us discuss the good effects. Dear students, economic growth of India got a big push due to industrial development. The contribution of the industrial sector in the gross domestic product of India increased from 11.8% in 1950 to 51 to 24.6% in 1991. The industrial growth rate was around 6% during the period 1950 to 1990, which is commendable. Due to the contribution of public sector enterprises, the industrial sector of the economy became well diversified by 1990. The then sunrise industry, particularly the electronic industry, marked its emergence in the domestic economy. The protection of industries from foreign competition allowed the development of domestic large scale and small scale industries. Various large scale industries like industries of heavy metals, chemicals, machine building, electronic industry, etc., all saw a commendable growth in the period between 1950 to 1990. Now, the bad effects of the strategy of industrialization adopted by the Indian government during 1950 to 1990. Dear students, the strategies adopted by Indian government prevented the industrial sector to develop to its full capacity level. Emergence of public sector monopolies gradually turned out to be a dead social weight in terms of inefficiency, leakage, and corruption. The performance of public sector undertakings was not satisfactory due to many loss-making public sector undertakings. By incurring huge losses, public sector enterprises caused a suboptimal use of scarce natural resources. Dear students, one of the aims of the policies adopted by the government to stimulate industrial growth was to check the concentration of economic power in the hands of individuals and business houses. However, the licensing policy of the government usually favored big business houses and thus restricted the entry of new enterprises, which resulted in the concentration of economic power in the hands of few individuals. Thus, the policy of licensing promoted the corruption and discrimination. The protection from foreign competition also had negative impacts on Indian industries. Due to protection, the domestic industry failed to achieve international standards of product quality. They had no incentive to improve the quality of their products as they were able to sell low quality products at higher prices due to lack of competition in the market. Lack of competition prompted the domestic entrepreneurs to focus upon their monopoly control of the market rather than on competition and diversification. Also, the performance of public sector undertakings was not satisfactory in backward regions. They were not able to check unemployment and bridge the rural-urban divide. Students, with the passage of time, the bad effects of the industrial strategy adopted by Indian government had started overshadowing the good effects, which ultimately compelled the Indian government to revise the entire strategy of growth and development. This led to the emergence of new economic policy which was adopted by the government during 1990s, and we will discuss the new economic policy in our chapter 2nd. Thank you.